Is now a children's book by Usborne, aimed at ages 7 and up. Yeah, that's right, junior school kids. Sparks controversy for teaching that refugees enrich our country and, of course, drive growth. Distributed to schools and libraries, the book includes teaching resources, encouraging children to even write to their local MPs about refugee support and actually asking for more refugees to be allowed into Britain. Critics, including Reform MP Rupert Lowe, have labelled the material as indoctrination, calling for greater scrutiny of classroom content. And joining me now in the studio to discuss this is the founder of the New Culture Forum, and that's Peter Whittle. Peter, welcome to the show.
Pleasure to be here, Martin.
As it's always a delight to have you. And you messaged me very, very early about this. You were quick out the blocks this morning. It caught your eye, and it's fair to say it made you rise onto your haunches. Tell me why.
Well, yeah, because this particular one about refugees is so blatant. I mean, we've spoken before about the general indoctrination that's happening in schools, critical race theory, gender ideology. This is a book aimed, as you said, at primary school age, right? So it's like get them young. Yes? And it's basically entirely, the whole point of the book is, refugees welcome. That's it. That's what sort of you can sum it up as. So, as you say, it says that it gives children guidance as to how they might write to their MPs. It says sort of things like, you've got to make sure you know about the benefits of food and different cuisines and this sort of thing, totally ignoring this catastrophic crisis that we actually have at the moment. It doesn't sort of ask people to look at all the other things that maybe refugees bring with them, not least of all a $5 billion bill in accommodation in hotels at the moment, and also, for that matter, great rise in crime, and also some pretty sort of practices which are pretty sort of alien to our society. All of that is swept aside. This is all about basically, it's absolutely right to invite anyone and to take anyone, and it's aimed at kids, right? Terrible.
Now, Peter Whittle, of course, refugees can bring great richness and benefits to our society if it's in the right way and the right numbers. And I think a lot of people would like to point that out. But what I think was curious about this book is that, for example, on the front page, I counted like 27 individuals. I think almost all of them are children. Hardly any of them are adult males, and a vast majority of them are women. So it paints this romanticised vision of refugees. And of course, people fleeing wars should be given, support and solace in our country. We've historically been supportive when the time is right, for example, in Ukraine. But this book doesn't give any counter-argument. It paints this entire thing as rosy and peachy.
Yes, exactly. But also, look, they're talking about refugees. What we're seeing at the moment, what is it already this year? 40,000 or whatever it is this year. These people are economic migrants, right? They're not refugees. Not
all of them.
Well, frankly, the vast bulk, I think, are. The fact is this country takes far more refugees than most other European countries. But the point really is more this, actually, Martin, and that is that, this is sort of like shaping up people who will eventually, they'll go on to university and they eventually will vote, right? It's supported by something called the Refugee Council, which I think we can assume what their view generally on this issue is. And then also, for that matter, it's partly supported by the Arts Council, which means it's our money, which is publicly funded. I think basically people should do not what they say in the book. Parents should write to the schools to find out if this book is in that particular school, or indeed if it's in a local library, because it's going into libraries too. They should do that. And if not, then they should certainly boycott it and not buy it.
And isn't this indicative, Peter Whittle, of perhaps a broader point, and that is, funny enough, a lack of diversity of thought about what our kids are taught now. Undeniably, for example, at my daughter's school, it's now routine for Muslim kids to be allowed to not have anything to do with Christmas. In fact, Christmas is barely mentioned. It's a C word that's becoming censored out. It's becoming banned. There's a feeling that this progressive ideology is one-way traffic and we're actually losing critical balance.
Well, quite, because all of our institutions are infected with this stuff now. My view is a bit more hardline, Martin, that I don't think this is born out of good intentions. I don't. I think it is born out of bad intentions. I think it's one that's hostile to Britain, hostile to British history, hostile to British culture. Why else would you actually bother to put books like the one we're discussing out? You know, it's not just a question of putting another side. It's a question basically of undermining, if you like, our kind of very society. And education is, in fact, one of the worst areas for this now.
Are we overreacting here?
No.
Is this, stop being gammon,
No.
Stop being so sensitive, it's just a kid's book?
No, it's not just a kid's book. I mean, it's propaganda. It's propaganda. There's no getting away from it. And frankly, it should be withdrawn or people should boycott it, not buy it. But I mean, I've got examples in my office actually of other books like this, that go into, primary schools. But this is a particularly egregious example. And I think it's so egregious that it's so sort of blatant that it's almost kind of naive looking.
Yeah, Peter Whittle. In fact, on Friday we had another children's book saying men can have periods.
Yes, exactly.
And that was given to primary school kids. So I'm afraid it does seem like a pretty much of a one-way ideology. Peter Whittle, of course, the founder of the New Culture Forum. Thank you very much for joining us
Martin.
in the studio in Westminster. Always a delight.